Good morning. It's the morning of August 22nd, 2023. And I thought I would do another garden walk. It's been a little over 2 weeks. Show you what's changed. Kind of getting later into summer toward fall now, so you start to see little yellowing of leaves here and there. We have had some rain in the interim, which has been very good. Got a couple good significant rainfalls. What we're looking at right now, this sand patch here is the foundation, or what remains of the foundation of my great-grandparents' house that I disassembled a few years ago. And originally we were gonna fix this house up and live in it and be near, at our garden here, but when I started getting into it, the house was just too far gone to save, and so it made more sense to disassemble the house. I took it apart board by board, nail by nail, and so you'll still see some remnants of that here and there. Some piles of boards and things, but most of this garage that I built here is full of boards and wood that I salvaged from the house that was built in the 40s, so it was built before plywood. So I'll just pan around slowly here. So what I did is, in the foundation spot of this old house, it was just exposed sand, and so I planted a seed mixture from Prairie Moon of dry, sandy, sunny mix. And it's been 3 or 4 years, and most of what you see are like coreopsis. There's a little bit of coneflower here and there, a few odds and ends. It's not super diverse. There's a little bit of pigeon pea, but not a super abundant looking little flower patch because of the really poor conditions. So why I'm starting over here today instead of where I normally would start is to show, I don't often show this side of the property here, but where I built this garage, there used to be an old garage. I took that down. I wanted to show I have a couple new plantings of elderberry here. These are cultivars, and it looks like the birds have already stripped all the fruit off, but they were pretty large fruited cultivars. I think there's a couple of the famous ones, maybe Nova and York. These are small little shriveled up berries left now, but they're behind the cage here because the deer just will not leave elderberries alone if they're unprotected. So the idea of planting them here is they're getting roof runoff off this garage, which doesn't have any gutters currently, so they can soak into some of that extra moisture. And didn't plant them too close to the building because I don't want them rubbing up against the building necessarily, but it should be an okay spot to keep those for a bit. The reason I'm showing this, so this is the address I give people when they come to visit the garden, 435 White Oak, and this is a driveway where people pull in to park, and parking area in the front here, and the way they approach the garden, so we're looking east right now, they would park over here somewhere and then walk over to the garden there. But when I redid this hedgerow, I wasn't really thinking that carefully about that, and parking and access and the approach to the garden. Before, people could just kind of wander into the garden wherever, and it was fine. But I think what I'm thinking now is to make a more formalized gateway, like here or so, have a path going across, so that there's an obvious place to enter the garden. What brought this up was there was a person who visited last week who was had some disability type challenges, walking around with a walker type thing, and that was the first time that had happened at the garden, which made me realize that I should probably try to make the garden as accessible as possible for people with different challenges. So I can't make super neat paved paths or something through the whole garden. I can at least try to make it make more sense for people who have never been here before and don't have their bearings about them and don't have an orientation. So I'm going to just show over here one more time by the garage, this black mailbox I put out. That is it's going to have a label, but it'll have informational brochures about the garden, which I made up a month or 2 ago. And so it gives people kind of the whys and hows, and gives them some background of this project and what it's all about. And it has like a crude planting map, a generalized map in there too. So as we're coming up, to this hedgerow, I think I'll probably take out maybe this Nanking cherry. There's a little autumn olive there. There's a serviceberry and another autumn olive, which I tried to graft, and the graft didn't really take. So probably these 4 plants. And that seems like that would give me about an 8 or 9 foot opening probably, but keeping in mind that these hazelnuts will grow out quite a lot from where they are and have to be maintained. So that, I think that'll be, you know, give me a good probably 5-foot opening at least, which is probably the minimum that you'd want as things grow up. So anyway, sorry for all that rambling. Alongside the garage here, kind of where that behind where the goldenrod is flowering, there's a great patch of black raspberries there that just showed up on its own. Okay, so I'll just kind of walk in here. Not a ton of things that are great to see today. It's kind of a hazy day. It's been dry for about the last week. We did have some good rains, like I said before that. And you'll see I've done some more mulching here and there. There's some grass clippings. So the cup plants, which is what these are here, these are kind of past peak flowering. They're still going for a while, but I'd say the best of their days have passed for the season. So we're seeing some bee activity here, probably mostly honeybees is what I'm seeing right now. The cup plants at my garden at home, I'm seeing all kinds of butterflies, especially swallowtail type butterflies, just constantly pretty much on the cup plants. So that's always a heartening thing to see. Seeing the things you planted get some use. Romatnia quince fruits sizing up a bit. My peach tree over there, fruits are about baseball size now, but they're still not anywhere near ripe. This catalpa's got some yellowing leaves. These little seed pods are forming on wild senna, so the flowers are about done on those. Now surprisingly, this patch here, this mound, this green-headed coneflower, and these are not opening yet, but they look like they're just about to. We're getting just the very start of some flower formation. But I have seen these flowering for the last week or more in the wild. There's some pokeweed, got some finished berries there, along with some flowers that are still forming there. So yeah, as we pan over here, things still look pretty good. The Monarda is kind of fading. It's looking a little rough. It got powdery mildew a long time ago, and the blooms are pretty much done, but it's still something to see. And the coneflowers are going pretty strong. They last for quite a while. And they've got, you know, before they get too ragged, they look nice for a while. And actually, there's still new ones coming on all the time. But yeah, that's a beauty right there. Get those nice kind of fractal patterns. So we'll just do a little money shot pan around here. See some bumblebees working on the Monarda. Don't see anything on the anise hyssop right now. And actually, it was not a dewy night last night, so there's really not any water to show in these margins of the cup plant. Very little. Serviceberry there is showing a little drought stress, delayed drought stress. Looks like the pale Indian plantain is kind of in full flower now. Let's take a look at that. This is a beauty. I think I can smell it from here. So unusual flowers, pretty interesting. Not the showiest. I do love those leaves. And the big blue stem is flowering. So that's what we'll see here. These little deals are the flowers of big blue stem. Some of them are already past. Some of them are just happening. Let's see. This pear tree, a lot of pears up top. I've not been able to get in there and thin those yet. Don't think any of these are up to size quite, and they're not going to be ripe yet for a little while. Sorry for all the noise in the background. I got construction, I got trains, I got semi-trucks, all kinds of things going on in the neighborhood. So I think this is stiff goldenrod. These are just opening up since the last video. Very nice. A little bit of a nice smell. It looks like a bumble over here, maybe taking a nap. It's really cute when you see bees napping on flowers. Sometimes they seem to overnight on the flowers. Some good growth here on this Asian pear graft. That little Gumianta autumn olive graft is growing okay. The hazelnut bushes, the crop is getting closer and closer. We're not quite there yet, but you're starting to see some branches bending down. significantly with the weight. And see if I'm going to show you. This here is more of the European style hazelnut. I'm looking for a good cluster to show you. So these have very little husk, and they're so unprotected. See that this one here's got damage, and I was hoping to find a little stink bug. I just crushed one off earlier when I was over here looking at this. But stink bugs really do a lot of damage to these. I think it's stink bugs, something like that. Anyway, stink bugs are on these, and so you'll see like this one here has got major damage. That's going to be a spoiled nut, or maybe it won't even develop at all. Sorry for the focus. So yeah, this, while we're here looking at a gateway, these two gate posts here are probably 5 feet apart, and you can see it's all overgrown. I've got hazelnuts on either side, and so yeah, probably at least 5 feet is the minimum that you'd want for a gateway, and then you'd really want to do a better job of pruning than I've done. So these, pretty good crop on this bush here. Got some wild groundnut Apios americana growing over. I've kind of put that around the garden in a bunch of different places and just let it ramble where it wants to ramble. Flowers of tansy, strange flowers, smell weird, like chemicals. I don't know how to describe it, like a plastic or something almost. Not my favorite scent. What do I want to show here? So yeah, pretty good growth on this persimmon. I think my persimmons either have aphids or persimmon psyllids. I don't know how you pronounce that. Psyllids, PS, something Y. Anyway, there's a lot of this leaf curling up kind of stuff, and aphid looking damage. Here's a flowering graft of the winkle chestnut, and actually this its parent here, it's got some burrs. If we can zoom up and see, it's got some burrs, but I think there's also some flowers. These tall, oh sorry, like the stalk things are flowers by the looks of it, which is really odd because we're way out of season for when they should be flowering, but that's what they look like anyway. So I'm going to show you a little bit of these apples. These apples are just stupidly overproducing again this year, and so some are falling. If you shake the branches, some will fall down. This golden delicious tree over here has a bunch also that are yet to ripen and fall. Some of the other branches have, or there are different varieties on that tree, and some of them have already finished ripening. Stinging nettle, or I think this is actually wood nettle. It's got its little seed pods going here. The flowering is already done. That patch is totally out of control. But again, you can just see the apples here. It's really silly. I thinned out some of the ones that I could reach easily, but I probably need to try to get these trees under control and bring them down to a more manageable height. So pardon the mess in the background here. That's not my mess. Show you a patch of blackberries here. There's two different kinds. There's a thornless, which I think is triple crown, and then there's a primocane, which is prime Jim, which is one I don't really recommend. It's not very good. Triple crown seems like a better tasting berry, and it's thornless. The only advantage of the primocane is that, sorry, I'm eating. You get fruit even if you have a hard winter that kills off your other stuff. It kills your canes off. So here's a native bee nest habitat. Got pretty good occupancy. Not seeing any bee butts poking out or people going in and out right now, but it has good occupancy. So the nursery area, I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, thankfully. I'm sick of watering stuff. I like to get plants into people's hands. Little pond has some water in it right now. I've been filling it up here and there with the excess rainwater. This nursery area, I've got some pretty thrifty looking dwart nuts in here. Some of these things have grown 3 or 4 feet above the ground. Got some pretty sad looking American chestnuts that have some leaf issues. I gotta hit those again with the acidic loving fertilizer. I probably made the mistake of planting these brambles, young tiny bramble starts in here, because they may run wild over this whole bed. I may be regretting that decision later. Here are the chickapin chestnuts, not looking too great, but there's a bunch of them in there, so I'm hoping to have a lot of those to hand off to people and some to plant out myself later this fall. The wild native oats, riverbank oats, or wild oats, whatever they call these things, little ornamental seed pods, are just about finished developing. Got some nice cuttings of willow and currants and elderberries in there primarily. A few other things, little pawpaws. More buartnut. These grapes did not do well this year. We've got more of this persimmon. I need to spray these things with some kind of natural soap or something. They're just wrecking these leaves. Those little psyllids or whatever we thought they were. Got a few elderberry fruits here being held up by the grape, but not a real heavy fruit set. And still the remnants of flowers on the Virgin's Bower. So these, this big patch of Monarda is basically done flowering. There's still the last tail end of it. And we've got some more buartnut seedlings here. Okay, I don't want to walk around. I'll walk through here this time today. Chinese tune tree has some leaf damage. It looks like it's got some maybe delayed drought stress too. Bummer, but I think it'll survive. And we've got a Rose of Sharon still flowering there. The early goldenrods are coming on. See there? So I see a lot of goldenrod around, which is always kind of a bit of a sad time of summer. Like you realize that the season is winding down. Don't know if I'm gonna walk over there and show my pawpaws and things and my blueberries. I had a few blueberries to eat this year, but not very many. One thing to show here, this isn't the best example, but there's some autumn olives are already ripe to eat. I've been eating some for the last 2 weeks, at least 1 week. Now, these don't look very ripe here, but other bushes, they're totally red. Yeah, those are edible. So yeah, it's time to start harvesting autumn olives. You and the birds. Speaking of, here's an autumn olive seedling that has gumi grafted onto it, and it's put on a couple feet of growth. There's a little tiny plum here from Oikos, and it has the first few small plums on it this year, and this has been here for probably 10 or 11 years, at least 12 years, I don't know. It's only ever grown about knee high. This might be in the beach plum genre, because I noticed a couple of my other beach plums in the back have fruit right now. Oh, here's an autumn olive that's got tons of red fruit. So this was an Oikos selection here, or seedling. But yeah, all the fruit on this one is bright red and probably edible. I'm gonna try to eat these and talk. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, every bush has a different flavor. That one has something perfumey in it. It's nice. Nice little pawpaw graft I did there, growing pretty well. For this hazelnut bush, it's got a pretty good crop, but it's not as good as it has been a few other years, because normally I would see these branches already bent down all the way to the ground, and they're not like that this year. So I think it's a bit lighter of a crop this year, which is okay, because it's had several champion years in a row, so maybe it's taking a little break. But hazelnuts in general are doing pretty well this year. There's a graft of Asian pear onto calorie. That's well, we won't name everything here. There's a Aromatnia quince onto calorie, growing okay. Getting a little fall color on this gooseberry. And back here we've got a little bit of ironweed that's snuck in here. And there's a really good graft of an apple there. I think that's pristine, growing very well. All right. So, yeah, it's supposed to be really hot the next couple of days. So, I wanted to do a video before it got too unbearably hot. Now here, last time I was filming, there was still some of the, what do they call it, winged sumac that was in flower. Now this week, we've got, most of the flowers have turned reddish, the berries are forming. They're not sour yet, but they are looking like berries rather than flowers for the most part. This is a St. John's wort here, finishing off flowering. So yeah, I did a bunch of mulching with grass clippings, with wood chips, with black locust trimmings, with sumac, superfluous sumac growth. Lay that stuff down on the ground. I'm not going to walk over here and show you my cornelian cherries. Maybe in the next video they'll have more color to them and be more worth seeing. There's some burrs on this chestnut here. This is the Hartman hybrid one. And what else? I've been trying to prune off some of the suckering growth of chestnuts. You know, there's a lot of suckering from the root system that happens on chestnuts, especially at this garden. And it could be just because they're struggling a bit, and that's like a survival reaction or something like that. But anyway, as if I pan here, you can see most of the sumac berries are turning reddish. Now over here, there are still a couple late stragglers where the flowers are still visible. There's just one little honeybee on that one. So I guess, you know, the action is spread out a little bit, which is nice. But man, I should edit in some of the video from a couple of weeks ago when this whole area was just buzzing with life and activity. There's one that's kind of spent. And here's a bunch of coppice regrowth from a cherry. I cut down 3 or 4 trunks of cherry, and a lot of it kind of resprouted. There's a chestnut, black locust, another chestnut behind that. Baby chestnut here. So the main idea in this area is chestnuts is the main crop we're aiming for. Yeah, these flowers pretty neat looking up close. So there's, you know, different versions. So this one is kind of still flowering. This one is basically done, turning color. And as you get further down the line, they get more and more like berries. Now there are male and female plants, I think, so maybe what we're seeing there will never turn into berries. I don't know. Got some bees, some bigger bees on this cup plant here. And if I kind of pan over a bit here, I'm going to kind of move the camera a little bit more gently than normal. I noticed that I jerked the camera around too much, and especially telling people to watch these videos at 1.5 times speed. That's pretty harsh to watch. So this garden is kind of past peak. The other silphiums are basically done. Rosinweed's still kind of going, but the prairie dock and certainly the compass plant is done. So we'll just take a minute to appreciate the bumble here. As we come around, the Illinois everbearing mulberry graft is growing pretty well. Got some burrs up in this timber chestnut tree this year, which is good. Leaves don't look too hot. There's a lot of leaf problems. And then here, we're kind of looking southeast here. Got a problem where I've got this cherry tree to the south of this chestnut tree. And so I need to either cut that cherry tree down, or what I'm thinking I might do is leave it this fall and then cut it this winter, but I'll cut it maybe at about 4 or 5 feet, so that way it gives deer something to rub on if they want to in this area. I'm not sure if that's going to really work or not. You know, they're a little unpredictable about what they want to rub on. It might actually be getting too big for them to want to rub on, but maybe for another year or two. I don't feel too bad about cutting the whole thing down either. It's basically just a extra bonus tree that it's not really needed anymore. I wanted to show over here, we've got some blight, or what I'm almost positive is blight happening, and some dead branches on this chestnut, which was sold as a Seguin hybrid. And so you can see everything from this left-hand stem is kind of got this dying growth, and there are some burrs up higher. And these other 3 Seguins, this one's got the major leaf problems. They don't have many burrs. I did get a few seedlings that I planted from the burrs last year, although I think the chipmunks got the better part of those. But I do, hopefully I have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 seedlings of those things. These are chinkapin burrs. Now these bigger ones probably have nuts in them, and the smaller ones may not. That remains to be seen. But this tree's got some dying stuff too. If we look in there, maybe blight is showing up on some certain branches. The ironweed, this thing's about 7 feet tall. That's kind of just at or past peak flowering. Plants still look pretty good, but the flowers are kind of winding down. Just as the goldenrod here is about to come on. This is probably the Canada goldenrod, I believe. And the ironweed's kind of flopping into the aisle here because it probably wants a little more sunlight than it's getting. This swamp white oak here has some acorns on it, I noticed. That chinkapin's got quite a few burrs on it, that's good. There's another young chestnut here. And you can see the kind of young berries of these things are, come on, focus. They're not quite red yet, and I don't think they probably have any sourness to them. No, not really. They don't really have any flavor right now. No, I want to show you, there's some pretty lusty growth on this graft over here. This is a persimmon. Probably should clip the ends of these off just so that it doesn't try to grow too much and then break off the graft. I don't want that to happen. Okay, well, my pawpaws over here are not looking that great, so I'm not going to show you those. I have done some mowing off and on. That bagging mower has really changed my life and my attitude toward mowing. I really used to despise mowing, but having that shot of mulch and fertilizer every 2 minutes is pretty awesome. Thinking about where you want to put that stuff. This pear grew a lot this year. This one I did top it because it was growing so much from last year, and it's almost healed over the graft. I say that every video, and really it's about 1/4 of an inch left to grow over there. Come on. So that, I don't know if that'll happen this season, but it should happen next year, early next year for sure if it doesn't. So this autumn olive here, well, actually this looks dead because there's no leaves, but all these fruits are still brown. Those aren't going to make it. The ones up here, they're just very, very late, I think. This chestnut graft over here, flowering because it's asynchronous with the rest of the chestnuts around here. Where's my graft union? Graft union is there. Probably won't focus, but got some Japanese beetles making out on there. Vine bark looks a little stressed. This whole chestnut patch here never looks good. I've not really paid it any mind in the last few years. Did a little bit of mowing once in a while, but that all could use some more mulch or something. But I guess if a handful of these chestnuts actually survive and grow past deer browse level, that'll be a miracle. And we can just hope that, pick the best 1 or 2. That red thing over there is an exiled American the European high-bush cranberry. That was the wrong species that was sold to me many times by many different nurseries. I should just kill the thing, but my friend Sam dug up some of the roots once and used it for some kind of medicine, so I'm leaving it as a medicinal plant, but I really don't like it. Got rosinweed going here. Still, well, it's about done flowering. This is one of the earliest ones at the whole garden. And you can see it's about spent. Now the little seeds, you'll start to see some seed-eating birds, chickadees or something coming as these dry down a bit, and they'll get those and they'll relish those for a while. A couple hazelnut bushes here that are kind of growing, fruiting for the first time in any kind of quantity. There's a wart nut or something, or Japanese walnut, I can't remember what it is, and some other young ones kind of hiding around here. You can see they've got lighter colored leaves. There's one in the distance there. There's a little supposedly pure butternut here. And this oak savanna still feels pretty open. But I want to show something of interest out here at this time of year is the American plum. And the American plum fruits are just about ripe. It's just in the last few days they've put on a lot of color. And so you'll see I need to come and kind of mow or scythe around this thing. But they're starting to fall on the ground, which is a good sign. The animals haven't got these yet. Let me polish this thing up a bit and show you the tree in the meantime. But yeah, these aren't very big. They're like the size of a cherry, or a large grape or something. But they have real sweet flesh inside, and I think they're kind of variable. You know, you could have better or worse ones just based on the genetic lottery. There's not really cultivars of this that I'm aware of, but they get some color to them. This particular tree, they get reddish. I think some of them get purple, some of them get yellow, almost bluish. You see there's some animal droppings here, so something's probably been here to collect raccoons or something probably. So that's cool. And then this, I've mentioned many times before, but this whole mound of stuff here, it's all American plum. And it's just starting to get pollinated in the last few years, 2 years, by this one that I've transplanted back here. So, if it'll focus, you can see the flesh is yellow. Got a pretty good sized pit. The skin is astringent and a little bit bitter, but the inner flesh is real good. It has a nice sweet taste, pretty good texture. And I'm looking for some fruits in this thicket, but I'm not seeing much. There weren't a ton last year, and this year I've only seen a few, but I think the one I saw an hour or so ago was not really ripe yet. Anyway, we'll just write this thicket off for the moment, because I want to show you something else over here. Now this, before I knew more about plums, I didn't know that American plum and beach plum would not necessarily pollinate each other. So I planted some beach plums back here thinking they would pollinate the American plum, and that doesn't seem to happen because they flower it a few weeks apart. But I'm not sure what happened here. It must be two different individual plants growing in one hole. It's got these little grape type purple plums, and they're getting soft. These are just about edible. And you got these little yellowish deals here. I think these are both beach plum. Probably, I think the species is Prunus maritima. Got a little bit of a bloom to them. I'm gonna eat one. I ate one earlier. See if I can polish this one up a bit. But you know, they do have a bloom like any stone fruit tends to have. And yeah, these are getting ripe now too. So they flower at a bit different time than American plum. Different enough that they don't seem to catch each other for pollination. But yeah, we got a twofer deal here, which I would have only known. I only know that because there's two different color fruits. Otherwise, the foliage pretty much blends together. Not sure how that happened, but I didn't do that deliberately. But that's cool. It's a nice bonus. Make sure I've got a pollinator here. So these plums are even smaller. There's a little seed that's inside of it. Yeah, so the American plum is small and the beach plum is even smaller. But the beach plum is kind of a dwarfing plant. It only grows about 6 or 8 feet tall and wide. Nice looking leaves on this oak here. Let's see if I can read you the tag of who this character is. The tag's getting a little tight too. Bimundars. You gotta remember to loosen your tags every year or two because you will strangle things. In that case, I would have only strangled a branch and not the whole trunk, but it is important to remember that. So yeah, I'm gonna come back and harvest American plums soon, next couple days. I don't know if I'm gonna walk all the way down there because there's not a hell of a lot to show down there. There's some more acorns that have, more oak trees that have acorns forming on them. I'll show a couple persimmons over here, and then we'll kind of wind it back toward the start. Now I'm noticing I've got little hazelnut babies here. I've got one here, and I didn't plant these, and I don't have hazelnuts growing within, I don't know, 50 feet of here. So the rodents and animals do a pretty good job of moving things around sometimes, which is welcomed. You know, I appreciate that. I'd like to have hazelnuts be my weeds instead of some of the other stuff that I have, like poison ivy. So I wanted to show this. These are American wild black cherry fruits, Prunus serratina, and very, very little fruiting on these at my garden this year. Other places they might be abundant, but this year there's almost none. I don't know if it was a late frost type issue. See, these are pretty small. They do get to be, you know, maybe twice the size of this on a good specimen, but they're mostly seed. They do have that kind of rum cherry, black cherry flavor, but there's a fair amount of astringency, and some of them are just really not good at all. You gotta try different trees to see what's good and what's not. This one, it's not something to nibble on as you're walking around, but not something I would make jam out of probably. Here's a graft. Got a lot of leaf problems. Sorry, let me spit these cherries out. My best graft, well, I got two really good persimmon grafts, or three. We saw one earlier. That one there is another proc. That one's doing great. This one here is not doing so hot. This one here is so-so. I've got one called, what Dennis Strail called Sweet Seedy Surprise. And that one is growing really, really well. So I'm going to show that. Now this is, unfortunately, it's a type that has, it's a small fruit and heavily seeded fruit, which is not two of the best qualities for persimmons. But look at these beautiful dark green leaves on these things. Man, those are so nice. The ones that aren't affected by the psyllid. A little sunburn or something going on there. That's interesting. But yeah, persimmon leaves are one of the most ornamental trees I have planted. So this hedgerow, you see some hazelnuts fruiting over here and there in the hedgerow, and some beyond. What was I going to show? So maybe next year we'll see some persimmon fruit. I don't have real high hopes because I'm a pessimist, and everything seems to take 3 times longer than you would think it would to happen around here. Those lighter green leaves are a Japanese walnut or a buart nut, I think. I'll show you another flower here. This is vervain. I don't remember which species of vervain. The one that grows in dry, compacted driveways. But kind of a nice little purple spike of flowers, and those are fairly common in this area. I did not plant those. Got some pretty good growth here on these hazelnuts. Nice little crop happening. I don't remember where these are from, but there's a fair amount on there, and you'll see I did give them some mulch a few weeks ago, so that's what all this brown stuff is in the ground. Trying to give them some extra protection. Look at all the catkins for next year already hanging and banging. There's some nuts. You can see they're a little bit bristly. Got some kind of almost sticky hairs on them. So when you pick hazelnuts, your hands can get a bit sticky. So I want to show a couple more things, and then we're going to wrap this up. I want to show these downy sunflowers, which are flowering here now. They've just been opening in the last week or so. These are a great flower, a great ground cover. Smell really sweet. They smell like honey. I'm not seeing, well, there's a little bug on that one. That's like a little tiny bee or something. But nice little fine flowers. Quite a bit of pollinator interactions. And nice ground cover. Seem to do well in dry, sandy, poor soil. Haven't spread very aggressively. But yeah, when you get a nice little patch going like this, it just kind of fends for itself, and it's not too aggressive, but it is quite ornamental, and the leaves are nice and fuzzy. And here we've got some sumac berries coloring up this area. I don't really walk through here much, but there's a bunch of hazels that have been replanted here in the last year or two, and then also there used to be a nice crabapple tree here, the Mike Hogue crabapple. I named it after him because he liked the apples, and that got removed from the power line construction, but it's got root sprouts coming out everywhere, so some of those have been grafted with apple cultivars, and some of those are growing okay. It'll be a few years before they amount to anything. I want to show you, I planted at least 12 varieties of grapes here over the years, and I've got exactly one that has done well, and of course it's the only one that I've lost track of the variety name to. So some have been planted and they died and come back, or they got replaced by things, so it's a bit mysterious. But this one I call Vigoro because it is so vigorous. I did prune some, but you can see it's just growing apeshit all over everything in the whole area, and it grows pretty readily from cuttings. But look at these beauties in here. Now these guys are about ready. I ate one earlier. Let's get one of these darker ones, and they're pretty sweet and soft. Or they're getting there anyway. But yeah, nice crop on these babies. I did pull off some of the leaves here. where the fruit's all happening. Geez, there's a lot in there. I had to put this in a cage because the deer will eat these clusters when they're still green if you don't protect them somehow. I've learned the hard way. And here we got some Japanese beetles making the scene. And speaking of deer, there's this vine over here had major Japanese beetle damage. And they had a cluster of berries hanging here, a cluster of grapes, up until a day or two ago. And then I guess the deer came along and ate them when they were green still. So bummer on that. I was hoping to try those. Don't remember. Oh, let's see. Frontenac. So that I think is more of a wine grape than a table grape. And there used to be a winery called Frontenac Winery in Paw Paw, my hometown. So I was kind of excited to try these just for that local connection. But so far, it looks like this is not going to be the year just yet. So anyway, maybe next year I'll put a cage around it. So with that, I'm gonna sign off. Got a lot of wood chips, a lot of work cut out for me with these wood chips here sometime. But yeah, that's what the garden is looking like August 22nd. Soon it'll be time to harvest hazelnuts, American plums, grapes, apples, what else? Flowers all season long. But those are the major things. A few pears. Peaches are, most of the common peaches are done, but my late peaches over here are still not even close to being ripe. So anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate the views and comments or whatever for the 3 people who find some value in these long rambles. So until next time, thanks.